Ellen DeGeneres, once hailed as the queen of good vibes, managed to fool millions with her beaming smile and cheerful "be kind" sign-off. But behind the perfectly polished facade, there was a very different reality, and once that mask started to slip, there was no putting it back on. The Ellen DeGeneres Show wasn't just a daytime talk show, it was a full-blown brand. It launched in 2003 and quickly became one of the most popular talk shows on TV, known for surprise giveaways, celebrity guests, emotional reunions, and Ellen's signature dance moves. The vibe was always light, fun, and heartwarming. But here's where it gets complicated. The louder the message of kindness got, the more it started to feel like a script rather than a genuine philosophy. So what was really going on behind the scenes? Things came crashing down in July 2020 when BuzzFeed published an article that ripped the lid off the supposed happy environment. The article featured interviews with one current and 10 former staffers who detailed an extremely toxic workplace culture. They described racism, intimidation, favoritism, and emotional abuse. One former employee put it bluntly, "Be kind only happens when the cameras are on." That sentence alone struck a nerve with millions of viewers who had believed in the show's wholesome image for nearly 2 decades. People started paying attention. Suddenly, stories that had been ignored or brushed off for years were resurfacing, and a very ugly picture started to emerge. Several employees spoke about racist behavior coming from top-level producers. One black woman said she was criticized for asking that the team receive diversity training. Another was fired after taking medical leave. Many said they were afraid to speak up, because the people they were supposed to report these issues to were the same people responsible for the mistreatment. Then came Hedda Muscat, a former producer who had been there from the very beginning. She dropped some bombshells. According to her, staff were warned not to talk to Ellen, not to approach her, and definitely not to enter her office. It was a high-stress, fear-driven environment where people constantly walked on eggshells. Muscat recalled production meetings where executive producer Ed Glavin would scream at people. What did Ellen do during these moments? She laughed. She reportedly looked at Ed and said every production needs their dog, implying he was her personal attack dog, doing her dirty work for her. That one moment spoke volumes. It didn't just show that Ellen was aware of the toxicity, it suggested she encouraged it. But the toxic workplace issue wasn't the only problem. As people began sharing their stories, a Twitter thread from Kevin T. Porter went viral. He asked for stories about Ellen being one of the meanest people alive, and the responses poured in. Thousands of people came forward with stories, some shocking, some petty, but all with the same underlying theme. Ellen wasn't the person she portrayed on television. Some shared experiences working at restaurants where Ellen allegedly complained excessively and got workers reprimanded. Others described bizarre rules like staff not being allowed to look her in the eye. There were tales of people being fired over minor infractions like chewing gum or having chipped nail polish. Even small acts of unkindness, like refusing to speak to interns or humiliating employees in front of others, painted a clear picture. It became increasingly difficult to dismiss all these stories as coincidences or exaggerations when they echoed the same behavior again and again. One story stood out in particular. A fan recalled entering a contest to sculpt a bust of Ellen and even wrote her a heartfelt letter. Weeks later, the bust was used as a random prop in a skit and handed off to another guest with a $500 prize attached. No acknowledgement, no thanks, just a dismissive moment on air with no clue to the audience that it had once meant something deeply personal to someone. As the controversy picked up steam, Warner Media stepped in and launched an investigation. Eventually, 3 top producers, Glavin, Kevin Lehman, and Jonathan Norman, were fired. It was a big move, and for a moment it seemed like maybe the show could course correct. Ellen finally addressed the allegations in a letter to her staff, saying she was disappointed to learn that people hadn't been treated with respect. She claimed she had delegated too much and hadn't been aware of everything going on. She apologized and promised change, but the apology felt corporate and impersonal, more like damage control than genuine accountability. The audience wasn't buying it. Ellen also addressed the controversy during the opening of season 18, apologizing on camera and acknowledging that things happened here that never should have happened. She said she took full responsibility, then immediately pivoted to talk about her position of privilege and power, and how it was difficult to know everything happening across 255 employees. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's not about micromanaging, it's about setting the tone and culture of a workplace, especially when your name is literally the brand. The apology didn't land the way she hoped. Ratings for the show started to tank. In fact, it lost over 1 million viewers almost immediately, and things kept spiraling downward throughout the rest of season 18. The damage was already done. By May 2021, the writing was on the wall. Ellen announced that season 19 would be the show's last. In her official announcement, she described the decision as an emotional one and insisted it had nothing to do with the allegations. But in another interview, she admitted that the situation had been devastating. She called the controversy a coordinated attack, suggesting it had been orchestrated by people out to get her. That statement rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Even when given the opportunity to fully own up and take responsibility, she shifted the narrative. She spoke about being attacked for months, about how guests always commented on how happy the set was, and about how it was impossible for her to monitor hundreds of employees across different buildings. The way she framed it, she was the victim of some targeted takedown. But that perspective didn't sit well with people who had worked there, and fans who had once looked up to her. Because being kind when the cameras are rolling isn't the same as being kind when no one's watching. And when multiple employees across different departments report feeling anxious, mistreated, or disrespected, it's not just an isolated issue, it's systemic. Even Dana DeMatteo, a fan who once attended a live taping, shared how she had once idolized Ellen, until she experienced the reality behind the scenes. She talked about how producers warned audience members not to upstage Ellen or be too funny. During commercial breaks, Ellen wouldn't even look at the crowd. It was like flipping a switch, warm and friendly on camera, cold and distant off it. And then came the final nail in the coffin, Ellen's 2024 Netflix special, For Your Approval. It was supposed to be her big comeback, a chance to tell her side of the story with humor and charm, but instead, it came off bitter, defensive, and honestly, a little spiteful. She joked about ending her show every day with "be kind," and said that if she'd ended it with "go fuck yourselves," people would have been pleasantly surprised to find out she was actually nice. That kind of sarcasm didn't help her case. Instead of acknowledging the hurt people had felt, she minimized it. She brushed it off as a misunderstanding, a PR nightmare, or just people being overly sensitive. And while she might be financially set for life, her public image had taken a permanent hit. So here's a question to sit with. How many people who watch the show religiously ever imagined this kind of ending? Another one. When a public figure's entire brand is based on kindness and compassion, shouldn't they be held to a higher standard? There's also something deeply unsettling about how many of these complaints were ignored or swept under the rug until they were impossible to deny. It makes you wonder, how many other smiling public figures are hiding similar truths behind the scenes? The downfall of Ellen wasn't just about one person's mistakes. It was a wake-up call for an entire industry. It revealed how easy it is to craft a public persona that's totally disconnected from reality. It also reminded everyone that kindness isn't a catchphrase. It's not something to market and profit from. It's something to live by. And maybe, just maybe, it forced people to look a little more closely at who they support and why. The Ellen DeGeneres show ended not because people stopped enjoying celebrity interviews or funny games. It ended because the trust between host and audience was shattered. Once the curtain was pulled back, there was no going back. What was exposed wasn't just a toxic workplace, but the danger of putting blind faith in public personas. And while Ellen might still have her fans, the fallout from the scandal ensured that her legacy will forever be a complicated one. If this story had you rethinking how public figures maintain their image, or if you have thoughts on what true accountability should look like in the entertainment industry, drop a comment below and be part of the conversation. And if you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another deep dive.